I'm Anil Kumar, and now let us see a few examples on quadratic equation and find their inverse. To begin with, we need to sketch graph of the function f of x equals to x squared minus 4x plus 3 and its inverse. So to sketch this graph, we can either write it in vertex form or we can factor it. So it is easier to factor this function, therefore I'll factor and then we will sketch the graph for the function. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 3, right? Now we need product of two numbers should be 3 and this sum is minus 4, so we could write this as x minus 3 times x minus 1. So that is the factored form. Now from the factored form we know there are two zeros. So I've already sketched the graph of the parabola here and we will see how it works. X equals to 3 is a 0 and x equals to 1 is a 0. So that is x equals to 1, a 0, the second 0 is at 3. So first step is find the zeros from the factored form. So we say zeros are at x equals to 3 and at x equals to 1. We get these zeros by equating each factor to 0, right? So what we will do is we will say let x minus 3 equals to 0 and that will give us the first 0, x equals to 3. And then we'll say let x minus 1 equals to 0 and that gives the second 0, x equals to 1. Now to find the vertex, it should be on the axis. So axis is always midway between the two zeros. So axis will be at 3 plus 1 divided by 2, which is 4 divided by 2 equals to 2. So the axis we know, now this is the axis for us. As you can see, the axis is at 2, right? So what you have to do is you follow these steps to sketch. Okay, so once you get the axis, now you find the value of the vertex. So f of 2 you'll find. So you say f of 2 equals to, substitute 2 in your equation, 2 minus 3 times 2 minus 1. 2 minus 3 is minus 1 and then that is plus 1. So you get a value as minus 1. So this value should be minus 1 for you. So once you get the vertex and these 2 points, it's easier to sketch. Rest of the graph, you can also follow the steps. If you remember, steps are 1, 3, 5, 7 and so on, where multiplied by a, here leading coefficient is 1, so it's multiplied by 1 itself. So the steps you can see are, from here first step is 1, right? And then we have 3. 1, 2, 3. And that is how you make your parabola. So the sketching of the parabola I have described you. Now let us see how to sketch its inverse. To sketch the inverse, we draw a line y equals to x. So that is the line y equals to x, and then reflect on this line. So if you reflect on this line, what happens? So reflection really means what? So when we do reflection on y equals to x, then what happens is that the x coordinate points and y coordinate points interchange. So on the function, if I have xy as the coordinate point, on the inverse it becomes yx. That's the whole idea, right? So let's go one by one, or what you can do is you can go diagonally and get the points, right? So let's look into this vertex first. This point is 2 minus 1. So this point is 2 minus 1. It becomes minus 1, 2. Minus 1 and 2. So that comes at this position. Let's take the left half of this graph. This point here is at 1, 0. So that will go to 0. So this point is 1 and 0. So 1 and 0 will flip and we get 0, 1. So at 0 we get 1. Or you can go diagonally and get to this point, right? Now the third point here is, that is a good point. So this point here is 0 and 3, so it will be at 3 and 0. So 0 and 3, so this point will go at 3 and 0. So 3 is here. So that is a common. Let me make a bigger point. I think that's better. So likewise, you can see we already have these points for this parabola. Let me sketch this half before getting confused about, because I put points in the same ink, right? So it is kind of like this. This is this half of the parabola, right? Now let's look into the right half of the parabola where x is greater than 2. So that point is 3, 0. It will be at 0, 3. So we get that point here, and then we can have that point which is 4 and 3. So that will appear at 3 and 4, or you can go diagonally from here. That is your point. So you can go like this, and that is the parabola. So inverse of the parabola is combination of these two square root functions. Do you see that? So even without finding algebraically the value or the equation of the function, you can sketch it from the graph. So we sketch the graph of the parabola's inverse, using the concept that the inverse is a reflection on y equals to x. So that is the concept for inverse. So inverse is a reflection on y-axis of the function itself. So this becomes inverse, and since it is not an inverse, I'm not writing x, right? But it's a combination of two square root function. I hope you understand and appreciate that part. So that is how, even without doing or writing the equation, we can find inverse from the graph itself. So what we did was we took the coordinate points on the parabola and then we flipped them to get on this. I hope the steps are very clear to you and they help you to understand the concept. Thank you and all the best.